Hi class, welcome to the last lecture of COMP3311 in this term. And in this lecture, we are going to cover we are going to have a summary of the entire course. And in general, we have learned 3 topics in this course. The first topic is data modeling and database design. In this topic, we basically learned ER modeling, relational modeling, and we also learned how could we map ER models to relational models and to SQL table schemas. The second key topic we learned in this course is about database application development, and it covers several subtopics. For example, we have learned SQL for querying. We have learned data definition and modification through SQL. And there are many different implementations of SQL, and we are learning Postgres because it is an open source implementation, and it has a lot of powerful extensions. And talking about extensions, we also learned how could we extend SQL queries. For example, we can use functions, we can use custom-defined aggregates. We can also extend SQL with triggers. And in particular, we learned PL/PG-SQL, which is called procedural SQL. And we also learned a Python module called CyclePG2 and how to use Python programs to interact with Postgres databases. Lastly, in this course, we also learned some DBMS theories and techniques. The first subtopic here is about functional dependencies and normalizations. We also learned relational algebra, query processing, and performance tuning. Lastly, we also learned about transactions and serializability of concurrent transaction schedules. We learned these theories because they are actually helpful for the database design and for app development. For example, for functional dependencies and normalization, it could help us to remove redundancies in the database design. So this is why we learned this theory. By understanding the relational algebra and how the queries are actually processed by the DBMS, we can actually optimize our queries. So this could help us in database application development, and that's why we need to learn this series. So that's the overall roadmap of this course, and that's the key topics we have learned in this course. And I believe you must be more interested in what will be examined in the final exam. So what will be included in the final exam? So sometimes you may joke about this. So what you have learned in class is much more simpler than, or much more different from the exams, what will be examined. So we don't hope that, we don't want this to happen here in this course. And instead, in order to understand what might be examined or what might be included in the final exam, we should understand what are the learning outcomes of this course, and we will go through the content of the entire course by going through via these learning outcomes, and you will and the exams are actually the exam is actually not to place a hurdle for your university life. It is actually used to test if you have achieved the learning outcome if you have acquired the skills and knowledge we wish you could learn from this course. So let's try to have a review of the course content according to the learning outcomes. So we have 8 learning outcomes in total. The first one is about developing accurate and non-redundant data models. So the keyword here you can see is data model. So here are some questions. Can you understand ER diagrams? Can you describe different entities or relationships in an ER diagram? If not, you can click on this link and it will lead you to the relevant slide like this. So you should wait a moment. These links will point you to the exact slide covering the topic. So you can. This is how you should make use of these slides here. And wait a minute. Let me get back to slideshow. And the second question here is, can you map ER models to relational models? So do you still remember the mapping of different entities, different relationships? If not, you should go through the link here. So the third question here is, can you map ER models to SQL table schemas? So here's the link. And data model is the key subject here. And we want our data models to be accurate and non-redundant. Therefore, we need to do some normalization. And the question here is, can you do the third normal form normalization? So if you can't remember how to do it, you can click on this link and it will lead you to the relevant slides. And the last question here is, can you do BCNF normalization? Similarly, you have a link here. And the reason of learning third NF normalization and BCNF normalization is that they are the most commonly used normal forms in practice. So in order to do these normalizations, you will need to know or understand some other key concepts. So for example, you will need to know what are functional dependencies. So if you don't remember what are functional dependencies, you should click this link and go through the previous slides. You should also know what are the inference rules for different functional dependencies. And another important concept here is closure. And a very important concept related to closure and the calculation of third normal form is the minimal cover. And of course, if you want to do normalization, you need to know the concepts of normal forms. And here's the link. Our second learning outcome is realize data models as relational database schemas. Actually, this is covered in learning outcome 1. So it's basically how can we design ER models and how can we map ER models into relational schemas, and how to map ER models into SQL schemas is especially important here because eventually we want SQL schemas in practice. The third learning outcome is to formulate queries via full range of SQL constructs. And SQL is the most important topic in this course. and it has a lot of subtopics, and let's go through them. So first, we learned some introduction of SQL. We learned the syntax. We learned the constants. We learned some how do we represent how to use string literals in SQL. So the introduction of SQL is here. And then we learned SQL expressions, which is also a basic element for SQL queries. And then SQL is not only a query language, it is also a metadata definition language. It allows us to define tables. And here's the link for the slides covering the metadata definition language of SQL. And we also learned how to use SQL queries to modify data. We learned how to modify tables. We learned how to modify table contents. And as a query language, the most important concept here is query. And we learned how to write single table queries to retrieve data. And we also learned how to write queries to retrieve data from multiple tables using the join keyword. And there are different types of joins. I hope we can still remember. And we also learned SQL views. We can store data or intermediate data into views. And we also learned about some complex queries. And here are some important things you should take note of. So can you still remember the difference between group by and partition by? If not, you should go through this link. And do you still remember how to write recursive queries and when are they useful? If not, you should follow this link and go through the relevant slides. And the fourth learning outcome here is you should be able to use start procedures and triggers to extend DBMS capabilities. So the normal start procedures or functions, SQL functions, are quite simple and straightforward, and we don't emphasize the importance of them here. What you should learn or address here is PLPG SQL function. So here's the link for the relevant slides, and I believe you have practiced a lot about PLPG, how to write PLPG SQL functions in assignment 1. And the second key concept here is called trigger. So do you still remember the purpose of writing triggers? So do you still remember the syntax of writing triggers? And they are very, very important in practice if you want to design database, because they are important for maintaining the consistencies between different tables. So here's the link of the slides related to triggers. The fifth learning outcome here is how you should be able to write applications in Python that could interact effectively with databases. And this relates to the Python module called CyclePG2. And here's a link to the relevant slides. And I believe you are still doing assignment 2, and I believe you will be practicing a lot about this CyclePG2 in your assignment 2. And here another keyword here is effectively. So you should try to write try to make the entire program efficient. The queries or the program should be optimized and shouldn't use too much of execution time. Our sixth learning outcome here is you should be able to analyze performance issues in relational database applications. And we have learned some best or bad practices and how to do some performance tuning or analysis in our last lecture. And I believe you have practiced a lot in your assignments, in both of your assignments, of writing optimal SQL queries. The seventh learning outcome is that you should be able to understand how queries are evaluated via relational algebra operations by the DBMS. So the key concept here is relational algebra. So what are the operations in relational algebra and why it is important for DBMS? So you should follow this link if you can't remember this knowledge. And also you should know how does DBMS map SQL queries to relational algebra. And here's the link to the relevant slides. The last main learning outcome here is that you should be able to understand the concepts behind transactions and concurrency control. So this is another important mechanism of DBMS. So you should be able to know what are transactions and what are transaction schedules. So there are basically two types of transaction schedules: concurrent schedules and serial schedules. And another important thing here is, can you check the conflict serializability for a concurrent transaction schedule? So here's the link to the relevant algorithms, to the relevant algorithm for checking concurrent serializability. You should be able to do this checking manually. And another type of serializability check is called view serializability. So can you check view serializability for concurrent transaction schedule? You should be, here's a link to the slides of the relevant algorithm. You should be able to do this manually. And that's pretty much of what we have learned in this course. And I hope that you can achieve all the learning outcomes, and you can know how to design the database. You can develop DB applications with SQL and Python. And more importantly, since you are computer science students, you are not just some students who just use these tools. You should be able to understand some of the internals of the DBMS, and you should apply the knowledge, the theoretical knowledge, in practice. And that's the final goal of this course. It is not just for you to pass some, to finish some assignments, to finish some quizzes, to finish some exams. That's not our final purpose. Our ultimate goal is to make sure that you could be able to do all these after learning this course. And that's all for this lecture. I hope you can achieve all the learning outcomes. And thank you for taking this course in 2041. Thank you.